1, and then we're going to provide lunch at 1 o'clock. Sorry about the time mess up. And our next speaker is Sarah from the Philadelphia Solution Seekers. Is that right? Solution Group meeting. And she's going to be speaking to us on 4, 5, and 6 steps. Welcome. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Sarah. I'm an alcoholic. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for including me in this beautiful day. Thank you, Maureen, for your beautiful, heartfelt message. I love listening to Maureen. Like, she just speaks to my soul. There's something so light and beautiful and free in her. And when I hear it, just kind of lights me up. I like to sit and just close my eyes and listen to her voice. I wish I had that kind of melodious voice. Mine's more harsh and, But, thank you. Absolutely beautiful. And, of course, I was telling Maureen, I felt immediately judged because, she starts talking about, don't talk about your cats. And, my cats had 2 surgeries this week, and I have to leave after I go here. And I've been on the phone with my sponsor in this crippling fear, like, oh, my God, my cat's going to die. I have financial fear that's $2,000 worth of surgery. But the thing about it is, it isn't really about the cat, is it? Right? It is about this fear that I have I'm going to lose something that's important to me. That I'm so terrified that I'm going to lose this thing that matters to me, and this is how I've always walked through this life. That's really what it is. That's what AA guides me to see, that it's not that it's about the cat. It's about that I think I'm going to lose this love, this belonging, this possession, this thing. And that's the fear that I've had my entire life, right? I've always had that fear. I've always had that fear of loss. I've always had that fear of pain. I want to avoid it. I've always had that fear of discomfort. I want to avoid that too. I've always had that fear of just not fitting anywhere where I walk around this world utterly disconnected from everything. I just can't feel that. I can't, I don't remember what happened as a child where some form of connection. I'm pretty sure when I was born, I was perfect. I was whole. My mother held me. I felt that love from my parents. But some point in my life, I experienced this disconnect, right? I experienced this disconnect from you and from God. And that turned into the most isolating and cold and cruel place that I have ever existed. I had never known such pain and isolation as the pain of being disconnected from the people around me and disconnected from God. And, I had this idea of a God growing up that I wanted nothing to do with because that God felt so incredibly far away from me. It didn't feel like something I could ever connect with because when I heard the message of this power, it was a message of that I have to earn this God's love. I have to behave. I have to be good. And I couldn't be good. I couldn't be good. How can I be good when I walk around this world terrified of loss, terrified of pain, wanting to avoid everything that is uncomfortable? I can't be good. How can I be good when I'm driven by fear and self? What's in it for me? Maureen talked about this. Transactional relationships. What can you do for me? I want you to be my friend so you can validate who I am as a person. I want you to show up in my life the way I want you to show up. And when you don't do that, I replace you and move on to the next person who's going to provide what I need to feel okay, to feel safe, to feel secure in this world. And I was operating like this long before I picked up alcohol. This was my go-to. I go to school and I need to be friends with this girl. I need to be friends with this kid. I need a boyfriend. I need the outside stuff. I was always seeking out here. I'm always looking out here for what's going to fix me in here. I always thought that. I always thought the solution was somewhere floating around in the world. I watch the kids at school. They operate differently. They're better than me. They got the rule book. I didn't. They know how to have friends. They know how to talk to people. They know how to live in this world without fear. I don't have that. I don't know how to, have a single conversation without my head running this tape of what are you thinking about me? You hate me. You're judging me. You're judging my clothes. You're judging my hair. You're judging my voice. You're judging everything about me. And if you saw what was deep down within inside me, if you saw these thoughts, if you saw these feelings of inadequacy, if you saw what I really thought and felt, you would hate me just like I hate me. You would reject me just like I feel like this power, this God has rejected me. And you would, and I set myself up in this place to be rejected over and over again because I don't let people in. Because I'm so selfish and I'm so afraid. And then finally, I experienced something amazing. And I picked up a drink. And all of a sudden, none of that shit mattered. It didn't matter anymore. All of that weirdness and that disconnect and that fear and that discomfort was gone. And I didn't care what you thought of me. And I didn't care if you judged me. And I didn't care if you saw what was inside me. I was so free. I could tell you anything about myself. I woke up on a level that I couldn't possibly, describe to anybody except another alcoholic who gets this, who understands that alcohol produces an effect, and it shifts my perception of reality in such a way that life becomes not only bearable, but wonderful. It becomes wonderful. I was in so much pain before I picked up that first drink. Let me take that back. I had a drink here and there, but I had some stuff happen that was extremely traumatic and extremely painful. And I'm not saying that's what made me an alcoholic, but I will tell you what alcohol can do for that level of pain and that level of trauma. It's like anesthesia. It just gives me that relief, and that's what I do. I seek relief. I've been seeking relief my whole entire life. And I end up falling into this pit of alcoholism, and it's creepy and it's slow and it's, cunning and it's baffling and it's powerful because it starts off and it's fun and it's amazing and it works. It works. Everything's better all the time, and I have brief periods where I can get separated on my own power, I think. I don't know that this thing that I've come to worship and that I've come to rely on is turning on me very slowly, bit by bit. I don't know that I have an allergy, a physical allergy, and when I put a drink in my body, I don't get a say in what I do next or when I stop. I don't know that. I do know that I'm abnormal. I look around and I see other people doing normal things, like actually going to work on a Monday, after a drink on a Friday. Like I recognize there might be something different, and I might not be normal in this area of my life. What I don't understand is this: why, when I have those periods of separation, I start back up again. What I don't understand is that lack of power, that lack of choice. I don't understand that, because when things eventually do, progress to a point where this is painful. I've crossed these lines. In the beginning it's fun, it's a party, and then it goes from that to being that job where I can't function. I can't wake up without it. I can't work without it. I can't talk to people without it. And then there's that other line where it goes from being a job to that nightmare, that dark, dark place that I can't wake up from that. I can't wake up from it. And that's where it starts to get really baffling to me as an alcoholic, because what I'm doing is trying all these things to separate myself. And I think if I just get separated from alcohol, then my problems will go away. Then it'll get better. My experience is quite the opposite. When I get separated, it gets worse. And it doesn't necessarily get worse outside, because I am able, we're all capable, intelligent people. I truly believe that. The book says it. We can get our stuff together when we put a drink down. I can get a job. I can be somewhat employable. I can, be, show up in other areas of my life. But the insides, that spiritual malady, that pain that I have, that disconnect gets so overwhelming. This big gaping hole within me that won't be filled with anything, that I can't fill it with enough men. I can't fill it with enough money. I can't fill it with my babies. I can't fill it with a relationship. None of these things will fill that hole. And eventually the only thing I know that will fill the hole is alcohol. So I will look at all the consequences, and I will play the tape all the way through, and I'll say, I don't even care, right? Because maybe a couple times I'll be like, yeah, maybe I don't want to go back to prison. Maybe I don't want to lose custody of my kids. But it does reach a point where I don't care if you take my kids, because they're in the way anyway. Take them. Somebody else can take care of it. In fact, they deserve better than me. They deserve a better mother than me. I don't want this. I don't want this for them, and I don't want it, for me. And these consequences, they're never going to be enough. Not for an alcoholic like me, because I know what alcohol can do. I know what alcohol can do, And I don't care about the suffering after a time. And, I will run this into the ground, and I will try every other solution before I even attempt a spiritual one, because I certainly do not want God to be my solution before I come in here. I want it to be anything but that. I want it to be the man. I want it to be the children. I want it to be money. I really wanted it to be money. Or, Not that I ever really had a lot of money, but I really would like, and I desperately wanted it to be a relationship or more than one relationship, because I wasn't really good at doing one at a time. Because it's always about more, right? There's never like, Maureen talked about this too, this insatiability that insatiable ego, that it is never going to be satisfied with what I have right in front of me. It needs more, and it needs more, and I need more money. I need more relationship. I need more. And bless you. And this is what I chase. And I burn all these solutions into the ground until I finally show up in Alcoholics Anonymous, completely broken and completely out of ideas. And, I didn't necessarily show up here willingly. I remember that last moment, that last gasp, being on the highway and trying to turn my car around and go home and stop living the way I was living, and wanting to for the first time, really. Because I like to talk about this. I used to come in the rooms all the time, and you guys loved me no matter what, because we have these traditions, right? One of them being the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. But what the most beautiful thing is, none of you ever judged whether I had that, because I certainly did not. I didn't have a desire to stop drinking. I just had a desire for consequences to stop. I wanted to end the consequences. I wanted to drink with impunity like everybody else I knew, right? I wanted to be able to go to the bar and come home. I wanted to be able to go to the bar and not end up in prison. I wanted that, but I couldn't do that. But that last night, May 2nd, 2012, I'm on the highway and I'm driving, and everything in my being just wants to turn that car around and go home, and I can't. I can't do it. Didn't matter how big the desire was. I had crossed that line. I had crossed the line. I had reached a point where the most powerful desire to stop is of no avail. I had reached that point. And I felt it deep within my soul. And in that desperation, I finally cry out to this power that I've been evading and avoiding my entire life. This power that I thought was just supposed to perform my will for me. And when that power didn't precisely perform my will for me, I abandoned that power, thinking that power had abandoned me. Disconnected myself from that power, thinking that power wanted nothing to do with me. But that night was different, because I was out of ideas and my back was against a wall, and I knew this thing had me. I knew alcohol had me in its grips, and I had no power. So I cried out to that power, "Dear God, just kill me or stop me." Begging that power to just take me off this earth or stop me in one way or another, screaming, pounding on the steering wheel, crying out to this power I just really don't believe in and I don't think cares about me. And that power intervened. Not in the way I wanted, of course. Handcuffs are not my preferred method. It's very effective. Power greater than myself, most definitely. Law enforcement. I'll give them that. And even in that moment, even in that gift of desperation, even with that absolute loss of understanding that I have no power here, and just begging God to kill me or stop me, I can't even stand up here today and tell you, well, I have this gift of desperation, experienced a psychic change, and everything got better. It isn't what happened. Because the ego, the alcoholic ego, has this remarkable recuperative power. It rebuilds itself, and quickly. Because, 24 hours later, when I'm in the holding cell and I'm not in the detox bed, right? I'm getting a different deal than I asked God for, and I realize there's going to be some consequences, and I'm really uncomfortable, and I'm afraid again. I pick up the phone and I start trying to get my way out of this manage, fix, control, and I can't again. And I end up being incarcerated for 18 months, and what happens during that time is I get sicker. I get sicker because I don't have a chemical solution in my life, because I no longer have alcohol, but I sure as hell don't have a spiritual solution either. And that's when the beast emerges. That's when the problem shows up. And I don't see it at the time. The empirical evidence of what I suffer from, I see in hindsight. I can't see it in the moment. In fact, not everything I know about myself at AA it's all hindsight, right? I would love to learn in the moment. I don't know, I'm not there yet, but I have to look back and learn ooh, that was bad, that was rough, But I look back and it was such a brutal time because everything was about me. Everything was about me. I didn't know that the real problem was selfishness and self-centeredness. I didn't know that that was the root of my problem. I thought it was alcohol, and it was insane to me when I found out the book doesn't even say that. The book says selfishness and self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles, driven by 100 forms of fear, self-seeking, self-delusion, self-pity. That was me. That's what I'm driven by. That's what's driving me. I don't have a say. That stuff's driving me around. It wakes me up in the morning, drags me by my throat around my day. It tells me what to say, what to, how to react to the world. And I'm treating people horribly from inside prison and feeling justified in doing it and still asking, gimme, 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 gimme. That's me sober with no God. That's me sober with no AA. That's me sober with no solution in my life. And, after this period of incarceration, I get released and I get let go with all these grand ideas because that alcoholic ego has rebuilt itself on such a level that I absolutely know how to solve my problems, even though I'm on state parole going directly into a recovery house because nobody else wants me. Nobody's willing to let me stay on their sofa anymore. And, again, God does these beautiful things for me, like crushes every dream and plan I have. What a gift, right? What a gift. Oh, you took my boyfriend away? How wonderful. I'm so grateful. I have no job and no money and my family doesn't want to speak to me. Thanks, God. But you know what? I stand here and say that jokingly, but thank God, right? Thank God, because those are all the higher powers I thought I needed. I was always making the man my higher power. I was always making the job my higher power, the money my higher power. And there was something about, I believe, that initial prayer. I don't know if it just carried over, but God showed up in a way I didn't expect or necessarily want, but it was effective. If you strip me of all this external stuff, I'm left with nothing and am forced to cry out to this power, and that's what happened. Curled up in the ball in the fetal position, like Maureen talked about. That's, this language of the heart. We have, our experience externally may look vastly different. You guys may have never been to prison, never lost custody of your kids. You may live in a mini mansion somewhere and have 2 cars in your garage. But I guarantee if you're sitting in here today, you get that. You get that feeling of like what it's like to be curled up in the fetal position with nothing left anymore, crying out to a power. Just help me, show me what to do, because I don't know anymore. That was my surrender. And I cry out, and that power directs me up the steps of my old home group, the Greater Northeast Group of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? And I walk into this room, and this room of people I've judged for so many years, this room of people that I've walked into, and like I saw how happy, joyous, and free you were, and I'm like, oh, gross. Like, I can't stand you. What's wrong with you? You're in a cult. You're insane. You're all on drugs. Like, I don't know, but there's nothing normal about this. And really what it was is I just was so jealous of you because you had something that was never going to be available to me. That gift of freedom and redemption that you would all obtain here, I was never going to have that. Look what I did. Look what I did to my children. I abandoned them. I left them in cars to go, get what I needed to get in the middle of Kensington. I got arrested with them in the car. I drank during my son's pregnancy. Like, look what I did to my parents. Look what I did to everybody. I can't be forgiven for that. But coming in this last time, I walk in, and I see people directly in front of me who are just like me, and I know this. Why? Because I was drinking with them. I was getting loaded with them. I watched them abandon their kids. I watched them do the same things that I did, but I also watched them walk back into the rooms of A and saw them sitting there with their dignity and respect back. I watched them sitting in the rooms carrying a message, not necessarily with their words either, but something about their deportment, something about the love in their eyes and the kindness and the way they welcomed me. And the way they loved me, even when I was unlovable, and they tolerated me when I was intolerable. There was something about that was God to me. And I didn't know that was going to grow into this huge thing. I didn't know that this one tiny little speck of witnessing that power was going to blow up into this life beyond my wildest dreams. I had no idea in that moment. All I knew is I'm broken, I'm out of ideas, I don't have a boyfriend, I don't have a job. Like, everything sucks right now, but you guys have something going on. So maybe I'll do what you're doing, right? Maybe I'll just ask you guys to help me. Maybe for once in my entire life, I will take these drastic, revolutionary proposals and I will implement them in my life. Maybe. I mean, frankly, at this point, I still had no idea like what any of these steps had to do with my drinking. I still don't really understand why doing a searching and fearless moral inventory of myself, what does that have to do with the fact that I can't stop drinking and burning my life to the ground? I didn't get any of that. I didn't understand any of that, but I knew it was working for you. And that's really all I needed. It's really all I needed to start, to make a beginning. That's all I needed was a little bit of willingness. And that's what I had. And that pain and that desperation led me to that willingness, which led me to you, which led me to the steps, which led me to God. And so this woman starts taking me through the steps, and I'm not going to step on Maureen's toes, but I have this experience in the third step that's just embarrassing. It's just awkward. I don't remember feeling God in it in my first third step experience, if I'm being honest, because I was so busy thinking about myself. I remember we're kneeling on the floor of a recovery house living room, holding hands, and there's other people in here, and I'm embarrassed. I don't know if anybody's had that experience, but that was it. I was just like, yikes. I had that family who prayed in public growing up. I had a lot of weird ideas about the God thing. I was really uncomfortable with that. But I do remember this. I stood up from that prayer, and that woman told me it's time to write an inventory. And she, gave me some instruction, and she gave me some paper, and I started to write. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my first inventory experience, and I'm going to move on, and I'm going to tell you what's happened later on. And because I've done these I've had to go through these steps more than once, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But so coming in, and I want to be clear that in no way am I being critical of my original sponsors. Like, we have the information that we are given and that is passed down to us. So this woman gives me this instruction to go write, put out on a piece of paper 4 columns, and I am to fill out the first 2 columns, and I get to write everybody I'm angry at. And here we go, because I've got a story to tell you. And it's a good one, because like Maureen says, I come in here and that's all I've got, you and what you've done to me. And I want to tell you all about it. And I didn't know anything about these steps. Thank God I wasn't here. I didn't have that spoiler alert about the 3rd and 4th column. The inventory was ours, not the other man kind of thing, like that thing they creep in there later. I was just like, I finally get to tell you what my mother did to me. I finally get to tell you what all these ex-boyfriends did. Like, I finally get to talk to you about that. And I write, and I'm like, here's like 27 pages of everybody else. Because that's the problem. That's the problem. It's all you guys. And I sit with this woman, and in my first instruction, as we sat down and we did this 5th step inventory, I remember calling her and saying I'm done, and I'm telling you, the woman was at my house in 5 minutes. She knew. This woman knew. Like, don't give me that window. She was like, I'll be right there. And I'm like, oh, okay. Thank God for women in AA who understand how important this is. This is a life or death errand, right? This is a life or death errand. And thank God I remember that today, and I have that. I believe that within my soul, that it is a life or death errand just as much at 11 years as it was at 11 days. That doesn't change, right? At least not for me. And so I start sitting with this woman, and I was told, like, we did a little work on that 3rd column. We just checked off some boxes. It affected my self-esteem. It did this. And then we get to that 4th column where I was instructed to look for my part. And I'm going to bring this up for a reason, because this got a little difficult and a little tricky with some of these resentments, because there were some men who did some things to me that was just simply wrong. It was simply wrong, and it was really difficult for me to get to that point in that 4th column to look at what my part was in that kind of trauma, right? But for the most part, I have this beautiful experience where I start to see for the first time that maybe it's not them, right? Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the problem here. Like, for instance, my mother. My mother got an entire page all to herself. Does anybody else have a mother who made them an alcoholic? Because I sure did. Like, it was definitely her fault. She did all of this. What happened was, something happened to me when I was younger where I was a victim of a terrible crime, and my mother's reaction to it was shaming me. How could you be so stupid? How could you put yourself in this position? That's what happened. This is the resentment, right? This is the problem. Oh, I have a lot of other stuff to add too, but this was the crux of it. This was the biggie. She didn't show up the way I needed and wanted her to show up. Bottom line, that was it. And I spent the next 20 plus years drinking at her, torturing her, punishing her. That's what happened. And as I work my way through these columns and sit with this woman and we have this conversation, what I realize is when we get to that fourth column, I realized that I took this one thing that my mother did when I was a teenager, and I allowed it to blind me to every beautiful thing my mother ever did my entire life. Every time that woman showed up at that rehab with that fresh set of Target clothes, you know, those clean clothes that you haven't had in so long, giving me a little bit of dignity back. Every time my mother just invited me to Thanksgiving when the rest of the family was like, please don't, she's probably going to rob us. You know, and I probably would have. If I had actually shown up, right? You know, but that's who my mother really is, right? That's what I couldn't see. That's what I couldn't see through me, right? Me, the thing blocking everything. Me, the thing that blocks me from you, that blocks me from God, that blocks me from this power, that just blocks me from the sunlight of the Spirit. I can't see. And so when I start to experience this shift, I see a little bit of truth for the first time, and it's ugly. It's ugly. But I needed to have that experience because I had never seen the truth before. I had been swimming in delusion my entire life, long before I picked up a drink. A lot of these resentments were old wounds, and, you know, looking at them in the lens of reality was really painful, and it was really uncomfortable, and I'm not going to lie about that experience. And I remember writing down these fears. I didn't understand what that meant when I did my first inventory, and I wrote down some weird stuff like, you know, I don't like heights, right? You know, but I didn't really quite understand. But I know that I had the willingness, and I did that work, and I had an experience. And that conduct, oh my God, that conduct, looking at that in black and white, how I had used every single person in my life. You know, the book calls it sex conduct, but you could apply that conduct. If you look at, that paragraph on page 69, where was I selfish, dishonest, and inconsiderate? Like, this applies to every single human being I ever came in contact with. Every single human being. You were nothing but a transaction to me, nothing. I used you, I discarded you, and that's how I walked through this life. That's all you were. Looking at that, my God, I wish it was just a sex conduct. I mean, that's bad, but like you add everybody else on top of it. If you look at it just the relationship conduct, this is how I treated people. And that was ugly, and it hurt. And it was like, but you know, there's some real, like, it brings me to this place again, this gift of desperation, this thing that I need God, because what my sponsor did is she allowed me to look at this stuff without that shame. That's the beautiful thing about Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, we can be responsible without being guilty. That was the difficult place. That was the hard place I could never get to, because what I believe my whole life is I chose to be this person. I chose to be a monster. I chose to abandon my children. I chose to treat the people I love this way. And over again in our book, it tells us we could wish to be moral. We could wish to be philosophically comforted. We could will these things with all our might. The needed power is not there. I can't. I don't have the power, and I certainly don't have the power when it comes to a drink. I lost that choice a long time ago. I couldn't choose my babies over alcohol. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't do that. So even if this was ugly, even if it was painful, even if it was uncomfortable, it was the truth. And the truth leads me to this place where now I can do something about it. Now I can bring the necessary power into it, because I can't get rid of these resentments or fears or this disgusting conduct. I can't get rid of that without a power either. Come to find out, I am equally as powerless over all this other stuff as I am over alcohol. I need God in all of that. I can't fix me. I tried to fix me my whole life. I can't fix me. It's never going to work. So I have this experience, and I go through the rest of the steps, of course, and I'm not going to step on Darren's toes or Zach's toes, and I'm sure they will give an amazing message on their experience in those steps, but I have an experience of my own, and I start carrying this message to other women, and what I experience when I start sitting with other women, and I get to be on the other side of this beautiful gift that we get here, where a woman sits in my living room or sits somewhere, we sit in a park, and she shares her life story with me. And I realize this gift that I've been given, where all this stuff, this vile, disgusting garbage that I think I'm taking to my grave, that I think I can't be forgiven for or redeemed for, I realize in these moments when I'm sitting with these women that God has transformed all these gifts and all these pains and this shame and guilt and made them gifts. This is the greatest gift I have here in AA, are my mistakes. That's it. Like, that's what I have here. Me too. Me too. I did that too. Oh, yes, I drank during my pregnancy. Yes, I abandoned my children. Yes, I cheated on all of my spouses and all of my relationships. Yes, I did all of that. So I don't look at women in judgment, and I don't shame them. I can look at them in love, and I can connect. And then I feel that power, that connection. See, I didn't know what the purpose of this was. I didn't know why we were doing inventory. Like I said, I had no idea why what the inventory had to do with my drinking. Well, if I have no power when it comes to picking up that drink again, like I have no power sober, I had to recognize that. I don't have the power sober. I need this God in my life, and my whole life I can't connect with a God. And then I have this experience of facing and being rid of what was in the way of me and that power. And it was just me. God never went anywhere. God wasn't far. I was always looking for God up here, out there, and everything out here, and God was right here. That fundamental idea of God that is deep down within every man, woman, and child, that God had been chasing, was right here. And when I finally got rid of these things promptly without regret, I felt that power working in my life, and I felt that connection. And I wasn't living in that place anymore, that dark pit of fear. I could be with you. And I felt that. And I felt freedom. And I start living this life. And then the life got good. The outside got good, right? I got the stuff back. Because you guys taught me how to do things like, I don't know, pay my bills on time, show up for work and actually work and not rob the employer, maybe walk through the fear of going back to school. And so the outside started to look really good, right? I did the career of my dreams, and things were happening. And, I had this love for AA, but also I had an ego in Alcoholics Anonymous, right? It was like, who am I? I learned the traditions in my home group so I could argue effectively, and I started to become kind of a big deal in AA, right? I don't know if anyone's ever done that, but so it started to happen. And I didn't realize slowly over time what had happened is, and again, I don't want to step on anyone else's toes, but we have these other steps later on, like 10 and 11, where we have to continue to do this work. And the reason I bring up 10 specifically is 10 is like a repetition of 4, 5, 6, 7, right? Over and over and over again, every day for the rest of your life. Welcome to AA, right? on a smaller scale, right? But it's a recognition that I don't have the power, that I need to continue to do this inventory. I need to continue to make amends. I need to continue to, understand that I don't have the power to be different. And I stopped doing that. I mean, even on the small scale that I was doing it, I stopped doing it completely. And I was telling Maureen before I spoke that what I started doing is two-stepping, and I don't know if anybody's familiar with that is, but it is, I admit I'm powerless, and I come to Alcoholics Anonymous to save all of you. Because I'm such a wise sponsor and home group member. And I got really sick. I got really, really sick. And the scary thing about alcohol is I don't know how sick I'm getting. I don't know what I don't know until something happened in March 2020. I don't know if anybody remembers, but it was kind of big. And I realized when this happened and the entire world shut down that I had all these higher powers were not the highest power that had been built up around my life that I had come to rely on and make my God. And it was all outside stuff, and it was all ego, and it was all that same stuff that was never going to fill that giant side empty hole within my soul. And I'm sitting in my home, and I'm doing weird stuff like chasing my cats around, trying to brush them 900 times a day, and like talking to myself. And I like realize like I'm deeply disturbed, and the outside is like not there anymore. You know, I still had a job, but I didn't leave the house, and I had a relationship at the time. And I'm going to bring this up because this is important to this other inventory that I did. During that time, I found out that the relationship I was in, there was a third party in that relationship, and she knew about me for a significant amount of time, and I did not know about her. And when I found out, I did not act as a woman in Alcoholics Anonymous should ever act. Did not behave in a way that I should have behaved. I fell short. And I called this woman a horrible name, and she was essentially a newcomer. She couldn't stay sober. She had been in and out of the rooms. And I reacted. And I hurt her. And I felt so justified. I felt so justified in that. Like, she caused me so much more harm. She was coming in, like, I would leave, and she'd be like, is she gone yet? And I just, like, was like, that's all her. She's the problem. And I was so stuck here, and then I started to, like, suffer because I was so rageful. I was arguing with every single person in my home group, like, you're not doing the traditions right. Like, it was so bad. And I was suffering in my home, sober, and it was just me and God, and I had a moment of grace. And I know it's a moment of grace because a lot of people I really love and respect and know very well didn't have that same moment of grace during COVID. They're still out there experimenting with this. My moment of grace was this, is I know if I don't do something, I'm going to pick up a drink, so I got to pick up that phone, and I called another woman in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I asked her to help me because something in me knew I was dying. I think the only concession I ever truly made coming in this room, like the only true concession I made is that I can never drink successfully again. I knew that. And I picked up the phone, and I asked her to help me, and that woman took me through all 12 steps from the very beginning again, like I was a newcomer, like I knew nothing. And it was the most humbling, embarrassing, painful, and beautiful thing that I have ever experienced. Because when I get on my knees in that third step prayer this time, like, there is no embarrassment anymore. I am literally like, God, relieve me of the bondage of self. I am so done. And I sit down, and she asked me to write this inventory, and now it's a little different because instead of looking for my part, she goes to the book and tells me what it really says there. And what it really says is we need to resolutely look for our own mistakes. I need to look at this from an entirely different angle. And not only that, she gives me some instruction on this third column. These little things that I had checked off. I don't know what it means if my self-esteem got affected. I don't know what it means if my pride got affected. See, what I always thought is the problem is in column 2. I always think that this is where the problem lies. Come to find out, my real problem lies in column 3. This is an important thing, and I had missed this for so many years. And again, I'm not faulting anybody, but looking at truly why I am so angry. It says, although we didn't like their symptoms, column 2, or the way they disturbed us, column 3, that's it. That's the problem. It disturbs me because of column 3. I'm threatened. My self-esteem is threatened because I think I'm a good AA member. How dare you speak to me that way? But deep down, you know what it is? I'm terrified that I'm just a piece of shit. I'm not a good AA member. I'm not good. I'm not good enough. That's the problem. And I start going through these resentments, and I'm looking at this third column, and I'm writing about like how it affects my pride, how it affects, these identities and stage characters I've been building up for years to protect me and make me feel safe. I'm starting to see they're so threatened. I'm just so afraid. I'm so afraid that you're going to expose me, right? And I start to like see these truths. And I get to that fourth column, and I write the truth, like, how am I selfish, self-seeking, dishonest, frightened? Because it's all about my perception. And I feel threatened in column 3, so I react. And then comes column 4, my reaction. See, I heard an amazing speaker once said, this idea, like the book doesn't say we look for our part. The only part we have in a resentment is 100%. I am 100% responsible for my reaction. That's it. I'm 100% responsible for how I react. And so I write out this inventory. And I remember going over this 5th step with my sponsor at the time. And we get to that woman. And I bring this up because this is really important, because I didn't even want to read that resentment. I was so embarrassed by all of it. I was embarrassed that I was in that relationship. I was embarrassed that it happened. I was embarrassed at my reaction. I was embarrassed that I felt like such garbage about the entire situation, because everything in that 3rd column was just like, I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. You're going to expose how I feel about myself. I was just so afraid. And when I looked at that 4th column of how I reacted, but I remember when my sponsor said to me, while we were discussing this particular resentment, she said, the 2 of you are the same. Well, I've never wanted to punch anybody that badly in my entire life. Thank God we were doing it on Zoom. Yay for the pandemic, right? Because I was pissed. And I don't say this because, of course, I'm like, I have to be the good sponsee. Miss AA always has to be the good. Of course, yes, I understand why. She didn't elaborate on that. She just was like, you guys are the same. And I was like, oh, cool. Thanks. Right? Thanks for that. So I'm going to touch briefly on, I'm going to step on someone's toes real quick. I'm sure they'll forgive me. Sorry about this. I'm going to talk about it real quick, amends. The only reason I have to bring it in because it ties right into this inventory, right? So when I finally got to my 8th step, my sponsor's like, she's the first one, right? And I knew it was coming, and I was in so much pain, and I was like, knowing that this was the way out. I knew this was the way out, and I was like, fine, I'm going to do it. And I reached out to this woman, and I made the approach. And when I made this amends to this woman, I was told, I had the usual script, like, here I was wrong for, and I told her I was wrong for the way I spoke to her. I told her that, and I meant it. I really did mean it. You know why? Because there's work to be done, and there's a prayer in there, because I'd been saying that prayer. This was our course. We realized that perhaps these people were spiritually sick like me, right? I'm not the well one. We always have that in AA. Everyone's like running around, I'll pray for you, right? Or some are sicker than others. No, how about this? We're just all sick. We're all sick in our own ways. There's no levels. I'm not like more sick, less sick. Like we're all just sick in our own areas, right? And when I have that power, God help me show this person the same patience, pity, compassion, tolerance that I would cheerfully grant a sick friend, right? Save me from being, I'm not praying for them. I'm praying for me. I'm the one suffering. I'm sick. Save me from being angry. How can I be helpful? Thy will not mine be done, right? I'd been doing that work, and I approached this woman. I had acquired a better attitude about her. And I went and I made this genuine approach to this woman. And, I told her what I had done wrong, and I asked her if I left anything out, and she said no. And I asked her a question that I've been taught to ask since, is like, do you need to tell me how that made you feel? And the woman shared with me that she spent that entire year that she was the other woman in this relationship, comparing herself to me and falling short and not being able to walk in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and hating who she was and feeling small and inadequate and that's how I felt my whole life. That was me. She and I were the same. And in that moment, I knew exactly what my sponsor was saying to me in that inventory, and that was the truth. And I got off that phone call, and I have never felt lighter and freer. It didn't matter what she said or what she amended. It didn't matter. This is the God moment. This is the power we get here in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm never getting there on my own. I promise you. I promise you I can't get there on myself. I just don't have the power to do that. I promise you. And I go through this inventory process with this woman, and I share that with her. And then, I've been not talking a lot about step 6. But I had this idea my whole life that I could kind of fix these problems. And if I've been talking about having no power to be different, having no power to get rid of my own resentments, well, where do I access that power? I have to go back to God. It's really easy for me to come in here and say, hey, God, remove my alcoholism, but I'll take care of everything else. All right? I'll fix the rest of this. You handle your part over here, and I've got the rest of it. And when I come in the first time around, the bar is so incredibly low, right? I'm a liar, a cheat, a thief. It's disgusting. So 6th step asks us, Is there anything I'm still clinging to, right? If I'm still clinging to it, I have to ask God for the willingness. And coming in, it was there. I'm not clinging to anything. You want to know why? Every single one of those things was causing me consequences. Why would I want to hold on to any of these defects of character, any of these objectionable behaviors if I'm hurting off of them? I was suffering as a result of them, so God could have all of them. Here's the problem. 11 years sober, that's not the same. That's not the same. There are things in my life that I want to hold on to. There are objectionable behaviors that I will sometimes cling to for dear life because there is a payoff on the other side of it, or I believe there is. I'm in the delusion that there's a payoff, right? Oh, let me gossip a little bit at work so I can get ahead with my boss, right? I'm not trusting God. I'm agnostic. And every single objectionable behavior, every single defective character, shortcoming, all come from the same place. Come from self-centered fear. The same thing. They all look different. So I thought the way I could handle my defects of character is attack them one by one. Well, let me take this judgment. I'll do something about that. It's not about that. It's like if you had this tree, right? And you have this big root. See, our problem is the root. It's self. Self-centered fear, that's the root of everything. Then you have this tree, and all these branches are coming out of it, and those are our defects of character, and there could be hundreds and thousands of branches, and, I could spend my whole life trying to prune this tree, clip away at all these little defects of character, and one by one, they're all growing back. I need to get to the root. I need to pull that root out, and that's that self part. And that's what the 12 steps are designed to do. That's what this inventory process helps us do. Face and be rid of these things. And it helps us pull these things up. And there's more work to be done as we go. And I have this experience, that 8 years sober. And I wake up and I'm on fire for Alcoholics Anonymous on a level that I had never experienced before. I had that experience coming in and it was amazing. I don't know if anybody's had the first couple years of sobriety where everything's great. You don't care if you're living in a recovery house. I don't care if I'm cleaning toilets. Everything on the outside kind of sucked actually. But I loved it. I was happy. But there was something different about this experience at 8 years. This love that I had for AA and the work that we do here and this connection I had with God, it was something that I had not experienced before. It was just this whole new level. So as embarrassing and uncomfortable as that whole experience was at 8 years sober, thank God it happened. Like I said, when those things come up, I like the painful, humiliating, embarrassing experience, it's real easy to try to just get angry at them, but those are the things that have led me closer to my Creator. I want to hate them. I want to toss them aside. And not only that, again, like I said before, these are the things that when a woman comes to me in her inventory and tells me about her messy, behavior in relationships or clinging to a human power or making other human powers their God again sober, I can talk about this experience sober. And I can share that with her. And I can tell her I understand. And not only that, it taught me about these other steps that we have to do that are absolutely vital for our program. Like I said, this 10th step, which is where we continue to kind of do this mini inventory. Where I have to continue, look at, because it's never going to be them. I want it to be. I was on the phone with my sponsor last weekend for an hour because I want my sister to be the problem. I really, really do. My sister's acting really goofy right now. And she won't even tell me why. But it always comes back to me. I'm disturbed. Why? What is threatened? What is being threatened here? What is my reaction? What am I doing with it? And the God piece is sometimes sitting in this place of deep, deep discomfort, which is foreign to me. Because like I said in the beginning, I ran from discomfort my entire life. I've been looking to seek relief my whole life. And this is a different way of living where I'm not doing that anymore. I'm seeking the highest power to kind of relieve me of this in a different way. And that can be painful. That can be uncomfortable. I think one of the greatest necessities of Alcoholics Anonymous is the willingness to be uncomfortable. I think we have to have that. And I think that's the only thing that saved me. That willingness to be uncomfortable, that willingness to treat this like a life or death errand. And the gifts on the other side of that are just indescribable. They're painful and wonderful and beautiful. I know this is a step 10 conversation, but it has to do with this inventory A little over a year ago, I was on the phone with my little brother, and he's one of us. And it was not a good conversation, to say the very least. It was a stupid conversation. In fact, we were arguing about my other brother's marriage. It had nothing to do with either one of us. And we were disagreeing about how they should handle their marital problems. And I think I was right, by the way. I think they should just get divorced. But herein lies that problem. Like, if only people would do as we wished, right? The world would be wonderful. There it is. There's my problem all the time. And I'm having this conversation with him, and finally, after this like tit for tat little digs at each other, and he finally says, well, why don't you tell me how you really think? And I said, well, okay. And my ego jumps right into play, and that Miss Alcoholics Anonymous stage character that has formed since I've been sober, that feels the need to tell everybody the truth in the most loving and condescending manner, shows up and gives him a moral and spiritual hilltop lecture about what he needs to do to change his life and get sober. Start taking accountability. Stop blaming mom and dad. And I'm so kind. I'm so loving when I say it to him, right? And he's like, I'll never fucking speak to you again, and hung up on me. Like, he was pissed. He didn't like it. So here's why I bring it up. Like, we're taught later on to kind of watch for these things. And my biggest problem has always been this. Long before I got sober, it was like, I have to win and I have to be right. My ego always has to be in this position of protecting itself and being right, because if I admit fault, if I say, if I don't fight you, I'm vulnerable. And I can't be that way. I have to protect myself. But thank God for Alcoholics Anonymous and this gift of these steps. And I'm taught to watch for these things. And I was like, got off that phone, I realized, my first thought is like, I'm right. I can't believe he cursed at me and hung up on me. Like, I was honest with him and he asked for that. Like, that's what I believe getting off that phone. But something deeper within me was disturbed, and it was uncomfortable. And I'm taught to do this. I'm taught to first go to God, because I don't have the power to be different in that moment. I want to be different. I can't be different. I ask God, remove this. I pick up the phone and I call my sponsor, and we do this inventory where we work our way down these 4 columns yet again. Why am I angry at my brother? Because he cursed at me, hung up on me, he yelled at me. What is threatened? My self-esteem. I'm a good sister. How dare he? How dare he? He's threatening this idea I have. He's threatening who I am in Alcoholics Anonymous in that 3rd column. I'm supposed to be an example of this program, and he's not following my example. How could he not listen to me? That's it. I'm threatened. And then that 4th column, I'm selfish. I think he needs to be different. I'm self-seeking. I want him to do what I want him to do. I want a specific outcome. I want my brother to be sober. I want him to listen to me because I'm the AA guru, right? I want him to hear me. I want that. I'm delusional. I'm delusional because I know I have no power, and neither does he. And most of all, I am afraid. I am so afraid my little brother is going to die, that I'm going to bury another sibling. I am so afraid. That's the truth I get to, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to seek truth, right? We're here to connect with God. We're here to seek truth. And I get to that truth, and I'm so afraid. And when I was able to see that truth, I was able to take the necessary steps to amend that before my brother died 2 months later. That's God. That's Alcoholics Anonymous. Because on my own power, it's more important to be right than it is to love. I can't get there without you. I can't get there without God. I can't get there without inventory. I can't get there without the truth. I need the awareness and I need the power, right? I can have the awareness and not go to the power, right? Or I can have the power and not have the awareness about what I need to go to the power for. I need both. I need both, right? What am I praying to God for if I have no idea what the problem is, right? I'm just probably forcing my will back on God. I need to know what the problem is, and then I need the power. I need to know deep within my soul that I don't have the power to fix it, but I have a power in my life that can. A power that is accessible to every single one of us, and it doesn't matter what you define it, it doesn't matter what you call it. This work leads us to the same place, and like Maureen said so beautifully, I don't need booze to fix me anymore. The 12 steps have done that. God has done that. I live a free woman today, regardless of the pain and the stuff that happens on the outside, and that's available to all of us. I love you guys. That's all I've got.